Secretary Kerry's got an awful lot of explaining to do. There's no reason to think that these remarks that Zarif made, according to the New York Times, they were made in private. He didn't think they were going to come out. There's no reason to think that he wasn't telling you that he was truly surprised that he did not know about these Israeli operations until Secretary Kerry told him about them.
The excuse that John Kerry is putting out there is he says, I can tell you that this story and these allegations are unequivocally false. This never happened, either when I was Secretary of State or since. And the other argument is that it was timing, that everybody knew this Israeli intelligence, that it was all over the papers, so there was nothing to share behind closed doors. What do you say to that?
Well, maybe Foreign Minister Zarif can't read the newspapers, Martha. I mean, he said it was news to him when he was told. I don't know the timeline. I think we can all go take a look, and Secretary Kerry can explain the timing. But we knew this, Martha. You heard my comments from some time ago. We knew Secretary Kerry was out talking to the Iranians. We knew that the administration, the previous administration, was out actively telling the Iranians, look, you can, this maximum pressure campaign that the Trump administration has put in place, you can wait it out. We'll be back. And when we are, we'll cut a deal with you again. And of course, this is what we're seeing even today, sitting in Vienna talking with these same diplomats about this same deal that Secretary Kerry was talking to Zarif about back when he was having those conversations.
Where do you think this goes? There are calls, as I said, on the Republican side, of course, to have him investigated, pressure that he should step down from his current post in the Biden White House. Do you think those investigations will actually happen, or that they should?
I don't know. I certainly think the American people are entitled to know precisely what it was that former Secretary Kerry was saying to Zarif that led Zarif to say that Qasem Soleimani's strike, the strike on Qasem Soleimani, was the equivalent of taking down a city, that he learned information from Secretary Kerry about Israeli operations in Syria. This is something that the world is watching. They're watching to see whether they can trust the United States with information that they provide us. The American people need to know what took place, and I hope Secretary will come forward and explain precisely what it was they were talking about, how many times he spoke to them, that he'll share information he may have on his phones, all the things that would help us understand what it was Secretary Kerry was talking to Foreign Minister Zarif about.
If these are true, if Zarif is telling the truth about what information he got from John Kerry, do you think, as the New York Post has suggested today, that it skirts the line of treason with Iran?
Certainly really dangerous, Martha. It's very dangerous for a former Secretary of State to be out talking about Israeli operations that he may have learned from some other foreign leader. He may have learned it from some American source that he had, maybe inside the State Department I was running at that time. Those are things that are dangerous. We need to learn the facts. And if you are out actively trying to undermine American foreign policy, you've committed the gravest of offenses.
What kind of action would you recommend Republicans in power in Congress take specifically?
My first recommendation is for Secretary Kerry to just answer questions, to answer questions till we understand precisely what he said and when he said it, and then we'll leave to Congress to decide how they want to continue to do their oversight function.
Well, they have said that they would like to do some investigating, and we'll see if they mean it, and if that comes to to pass. Going back to the sort of back and forth that you had during your time as Secretary of State with John Kerry over this issue of continuing discussions with Javad Zarif, Kerry said that he was in touch with his former counterparts around the world, just like every previous Secretary of State. And he says in a long phone conversation with Secretary Pompeo earlier this year, he went into great detail about what he had learned about the Iranians' view. Is that true? Did he brief you on his discussions?
He certainly never told me he was talking about Israeli operations, that's for sure. Look, there were many who were talking to Foreign Minister Zarif. I urged every one of them, by the way, many senators too. They were talking to Zarif as if Zarif had some power, some capacity. We knew that Zarif is a phony. Zarif is just the front man. He's the cover guy for the Ayatollah and for Qasem Soleimani. He says it himself when he's talking to this reporter in what he thought was a private conversation. He said, look, the terrorists, the IRGC guys, they were out countermanding me every day. Why Secretary Kerry felt compelled to talk to Javad Zarif about American policy in Iran when he was out of office is beyond me. Secretary Kerry's statement about talking to foreign leaders is true. Seniors from the past still talk to foreign leaders. Dr. Kissinger does. Others do too. That's perfectly appropriate. But it's not the case that private conversations about active and ongoing operations are ever appropriate to discuss.